What is up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the best gaming smartphones if you're on a budget in that $200 to $300 price range. We're starting off with the Galaxy S10, probably my favorite device on this list for gaming because it just plays everything super smooth with a beautiful display. So you do have on the Galaxy S10 the Snapdragon 855. I recommend the Snapdragon variant of this phone, Adreno 640 on here. You also get 8 gigs of RAM on the base model, which is really nice. 128 gigs of internal storage as well is on here. And as you can see, it plays everything pretty much maxed out. PUBG, it plays maxed out. Also, it plays Call of Duty maxed out. In Fortnite, you can actually play at 60 frames. So this is one of my favorite devices just for that, entry level gaming that is going to be pretty much high settings. So you do have a full premium design on here, which feels really nice. It's a really nice feeling phone in the hand, glass and metal. It also has an IP68 dust and water resistant rating on here, and like I said, a 6.1 inch dynamic LED HDR10 display is really awesome on here because it's not super big, but it's also not too small. So anybody that does not like big phones like that, this is definitely a great one to have. And if you do want the bigger version of this, you can always get the Galaxy S10 Plus. This has a 1440p display, 550 for the PPI. Overall, beautiful display with the punch hole, zero issues. You do have on here stereo speakers, which sound really great. They're tuned by AKG, also with a headphone jack as well, which is really awesome too. So you can plug and play, no issue there. It also has a lot of additional features like your NFC, the under the display fingerprint sensor, face unlock, also your Samsung desktop support. You also have your reverse wireless charging on here as well, which is really nice. So this phone also has a pretty good camera setup, a triple camera setup, a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel telephoto, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. You also have 4K video at 60 FPS and a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K. So overall image quality, the build quality, the specs, this phone is really great. Now this phone does have kind of a smaller battery, a 3400 milliamp battery on here with 15-watt charging, and you also have wireless charging as well at 15 watts, and again with that reverse wireless charging. Battery life is around 6 hours and 30 minutes of screen on time, which is not too bad. So overall, the S10 is definitely a phone to check out. All right, next, if you want a more full screen experience, I would highly recommend the OnePlus 7 Pro or the 7T Pro. So the 7 Pro basically will give you a full screen gaming experience on here, which is really nice. It's a fluid AMOLED display at 90 Hz, HDR10. You can see there's no punch hole or no notch or anything. This uses the pop-up camera mechanism. It's a pretty big display at 6.67 inches. It's also a 1440p display with 516 for the PPI. Overall, just a beautiful panel for anybody that wants to game. You don't want to see any type of punch hole or notch. It does make a difference to me. It gives you a really beautiful immersive experience. Also on the 7 Pro, you do have the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640 on here. Oxygen OS is running on here. Android 10 or Android 11 is running on here as well. You have a full premium design on here as well, so it just feels really nice, glass and metal on here. This phone does not have any type of SD card support, unfortunately. You do have 128 and 6 gigs of RAM or 256 and 8 gigs of RAM depending on your configuration. You also have stereo speakers on here which sound pretty good. No headphone jack. You also have NFC and a very fast under the display fingerprint sensor with the face unlock as well, still on here. Now this phone actually does have a pretty decent camera setup, triple camera setup, 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel telephoto with a 16 megapixel ultra wide, shoots in 4K 30 or 60 FPS, and then you have that 60 megapixel pop-up camera that shoots in 1080p. And the 7 Pro also has pretty good battery life at 4000 milliamp battery with 30-watt warp charge. So I can usually squeeze around 7 hours to 8 hours depending on how I use it on this phone. So definitely the 7 Pro is great. It can play games. One thing I noticed with Fortnite, it did struggle with that, but with Call of Duty and PUBG, I was able to play no problem. And actually can play PUBG with that 90 frames per second option on there as well, which is really nice. So definitely check out the 7 Pro. Next is the Poco X3 Pro. You can find this for around 250 bucks, and this sort of has a unique thing over the other smartphones. It actually has a 120 hertz display on here. It's an IPS LCD panel, HDR10 at 6.67 inches, 1080p 395 for the PPI. This phone actually packs the Snapdragon 860 processor on top of the Adreno 640 with the Android 11 MIUI 12.5 skin on here. This phone does an excellent job with gaming. It's able to play pretty much anything you throw at it at high settings, whether it be Fortnite, Call of Duty, PUBG. It's able to handle these games really well. Another highlight with this phone is also it's got the biggest battery on the list at 5,160 milliamps. So this phone gets crazy battery life. So it's a battery champ. So if you need a good gaming experience, but you also want very long battery life, this is also a phone that I would highly recommend. You have it's an okay design on here. It's just a plastic build, nothing too flashy or too fancy with this one. IP53 dust and splash proof, so you do have that on there, and you also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 or 8 gigs of RAM, depending on your configuration. And you also have stereo speakers are still on board, very loud, very nice sounding stereo speakers, and your headphone jack is actually still on board with NFC and your infrared port as well. You have a physical fingerprint scanner side mounted on here, so that is really nice. And this phone also charges very fast at 33 watts as well, so it charges super quick in addition to that long battery life. The cameras on here are okay. I don't think they're the best on this list. You have a 48 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel macro, and depth sensor. Please watch my videos I have videos on all these phones if you want to see more in detail. It's 4K video, and then a 20 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 1080p. Basically, it's a pretty good camera. I still think like the Galaxy S10 and these older flagship phones are still going to be better than pretty much any mid-ranger to me. But yeah, so this takes good photos. So overall, the Poco X3, the highlight, that 120 hertz and really long battery life, strong processor, is definitely something to consider. All right, next is the Galaxy S10e. Basically, this is just the baby version of the Galaxy S10. Pretty much I just like the gaming experience on here because of the smaller, more compact display on here. I noticed there is a pretty large group of people who still want compact phones. So if you're one of those people that want a compact smartphone, definitely check out the Galaxy S10e here. It's super cheap. You can actually find it just right around that $200 price point. Same pretty much everything. Aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant on here. You do have a 5.8-inch dynamic AMOLED display, HDR10 plus, 1080p, 438 for the PPI. The punch hole is pretty much the same. This one is the Snapdragon 855 and Adreno 640. You also have Android 11 on here, One UI 3.0, and it runs totally fine. Every game that I played throughout this guy, it ran pretty good. So this phone can get a little bit warm. I've never had heating problems with this phone, like it actually throttling and getting super hot. I haven't had any issues with any of these phones doing that, but this phone gets like a little warm to the touch. But it's able to play pretty much any game, zero problem. So that's something that I really like. You also have micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM on here as well. And you also have on here your stereo speakers, which sound excellent, and also a headphone jack is still on board along with NFC. And you also keep Samsung desktop support with the S10e, which is crazy. So you actually do have that feature. And you also have your fingerprint scanner side mounted. It's physical, and it works really well. And this phone, has excellent cameras on here too. It's a dual camera setup, 12 megapixel standard, 16 megapixel ultra wide, 4K video, 10 megapixel selfie, 4K video as well. So really good image quality with the S10e. And you do have a small battery on here, 3,100 milliamp battery, 15 watt charging, and then wireless charging at 15 watts, and this does support the reverse wireless charging as well. So the S10e is overall, if you're looking for a more compact gaming experience, then definitely check this one out. All right, last is the big boy and the most expensive and most powerful. So the LG V60 you can pick up for around 358 bucks, and that link will be down below. This is going to be the overall best gaming experience because you have that dual screen case. support on here, which will take your gaming to a next level for games that support it. And it's just an overall excellent smartphone. You're getting a ton of power with the Snapdragon 865 on here. So again, it's going to be the most powerful phone on this list. Adreno 650, Android 11 is on board. You also have a full, tank of a design. It's a aluminum frame, glass back, IP68 dust and water resistant. It is a tank of a phone, and it feels super premium in the hand. You also have the POLED display HDR10 Plus at 6.8 inches, so another massive phone as far as display goes. 1080p 395 for the PPI. Overall, it's a very nice display. Zero issues with color and brightness and stuff like that. This phone also has some of the best stereo speakers, I think, just right, under the ROG Phone 3. Speaker quality is just really excellent, just very booming bass on here, good mids and highs, just a beautiful sounding speaker on here. And you do have the headphone jack, and also another standout feature is headphone jack does have a quad DAC, so if you have good headphones, you can get some amazing sound quality with your gaming experience. You also have NFC on board. Under the display, fingerprint sensor is on board as well. And you also have very good cameras on here, 64 megapixel standard, 13 megapixel ultra wide, 0.3 depth sensor. It actually shoots in 8K, and you also have 10 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K. So image quality is very good on here, especially at this price point. So it's a very powerful phone. Like I said, the highlight with this one, Snapdragon 865, 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage, expandable storage, just booming speakers. You also have a massive 5,000 milliamp battery on here with fast charging, with wireless charging as well. So battery life is actually extremely good on here as well. So overall, the V60 is just a beast of a device, especially if you're trying to do a gaming and you're just a power user. So that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one.